The sound of cracking stone echoed through the valley before anyone understood what was happening. When Mark stepped outside that morning, his dam was already half gone, torn apart under HOA orders for unpaid fees, and this story promised a twist that would change the entire neighborhood forever. The small dam behind Mark's property had been there for decades, quietly controlling runoff water and protecting nearby homes from flooding. It was approved long before the HOA even existed, but the new HOA president, Diane Keller, claimed Mark owed years of water management fees. Without waiting for a response, she authorized its destruction. Mark stood frozen as workers packed up and left. Water rushing where stone once held firm. Neighbors watched from a distance, unsure who was right, but certain something felt wrong. Mark had paid every HOA due on time. He knew it. His records proved it. Yet Diane's notice, stamped and official, said otherwise. Instead of shouting or stopping the workers, Mark did something unexpected. He calmly photographed everything, measured the damage, and made one quiet phone call. He didn't argue with the HOA. He didn't beg. He asked for something far more dangerous to them, an inspection. As the sun climbed higher, water continued to spread beyond the broken dam, creeping toward shared land. Mark looked on calmly, because Diane had no idea what she had just triggered. And once the inspection began, nothing in the neighborhood would ever be the same again. By afternoon, the consequences began to show. Water pooled along the walking path, soaking soil near several HOA-maintained lawns. Diane dismissed concerns, insisting the dam was illegal and the problem temporary. She spoke confidently, believing authority alone would protect her decision. Mark stayed silent. Inside his home, he organized permits older than the HOA itself. County approvals. Environmental surveys. Photos dated years back. Every document told one clear story. The dam was legal, necessary, and privately owned. When the county inspector arrived the next morning, Diane greeted him with a practiced smile. She framed the issue as a fee dispute, minimizing the destruction as routine enforcement. The inspector didn't respond. He walked directly to the damaged site and knelt beside the rushing water. His expression changed. He asked who approved the demolition. Diane raised her hand. He asked for environmental clearance. She hesitated. He asked about flood impact studies. Silence followed. Mark finally stepped forward, handing over his documents without a word of accusation. Page by page, the inspector reviewed them carefully. Neighbors gathered closer, sensing the shift. What Diane thought was a power move was now being questioned under official authority. The inspector stood and looked at Diane, his tone calm but firm. He explained that unauthorized damage to a water control structure could carry serious consequences. Diane's confidence cracked slightly, but she still believed she could talk her way out. She didn't yet realize this inspection wasn't about fees anymore. It was about responsibility. And it was only just beginning. By noon, the inspection expanded. Temporary markers appeared around the damaged dam, and warning tape went up. The inspector made several calls, each one drawing more attention from neighbors who had once trusted the HOA without question. Diane tried to regain control by calling an emergency HOA meeting, claiming misinformation was spreading. But the inspector attended too, sitting quietly as Diane spoke. Her voice sounded strong, but her words fell thin against the growing evidence. When questions opened, neighbors asked about flood risks, liability, and why no notice had been given. Diane struggled to answer clearly. Mark remained seated, letting facts speak instead of emotion. The inspector finally addressed the room. He explained that the dam's removal had already altered water flow and created potential damage to shared HOA property. Repairs would not be optional. Accountability would be required. A murmur spread across the room. Diane's authority, once unquestioned, now felt fragile. She argued the HOA acted in good faith. The inspector replied that good faith does not replace permits. That sentence landed heavily. Later that evening, rain clouds gathered. Light rain fell, and water moved faster than before, pressing into areas it never had. Neighbors watched nervously, realizing the dam had been protecting more than just Mark's land. Diane sat alone that night, drafting emails, trying to control the narrative. But control was slipping. The inspection report wasn't finished yet, and when it was, it would reveal a truth the HOA could no longer hide. The official report arrived 3 days later. It confirmed what Mark had known all along. The dam was legally permitted, environmentally necessary, and wrongfully destroyed. Worse, the HOA had no authority to touch it in the first place. The county ordered immediate corrective action and required the HOA to fund repairs. Fines were mentioned. Oversight was mandated. Diane's name appeared repeatedly in the report as the approving party. At the next HOA meeting, the room felt different. Neighbors who once stayed quiet now spoke openly. Some shared past enforcement threats. Others questioned unexplained fees. Diane attempted to defend herself, but the confidence was gone. Mark finally spoke. He didn't attack. He explained how silence had nearly cost the neighborhood its safety. He said rules matter, but so does understanding them. His calm words carried more weight than any accusation. The board members exchanged uneasy looks. They realized Diane's actions had placed them all at risk. A vote was called to suspend enforcement powers temporarily. Diane objected loudly, but it didn't matter. The decision passed. Outside, repair crews arrived to assess rebuilding the dam. Neighbors watched, understanding now that Mark hadn't been fighting the HOA. He had been protecting everyone, yet one question remained unanswered. What would happen to Diane? The report hinted at consequences. But the final decision hadn't been made. And when it came, it would reshape the HOA permanently. Pressure mounted quickly. The county required training for the HOA board and threatened further penalties if repairs weren't completed properly. Insurance companies requested explanations. Suddenly, Diane's authority felt like a liability. Emails surfaced showing Diane had ignored warnings from a previous board member about the dam. Those messages spread quietly but effectively. Trust eroded with every new detail. At a special meeting, Diane announced her resignation, citing personal stress. The room was silent. No one argued. No one applauded. It was simply over. Mark watched from the back as a temporary committee formed, promising transparency and cooperation with county officials. For the first time in years, the HOA felt less like a weapon and more like a community. Reconstruction of the dam began under supervision. Stone by stone, it returned stronger than before. Water flow stabilized. Grass dried. Relief spread. Neighbors thanked Mark privately. He accepted quietly, reminding them that standing firm didn't require shouting. It required patience, but the story wasn't finished yet. One final decision from the county would determine whether this neighborhood truly learned its lesson, or whether old habits would return under new names. The final county decision arrived weeks later. The HOA was placed under monitored compliance for 1 full year. Any major action now required external approval. Power was limited. Accountability enforced. For the neighborhood, it felt like a reset. Mark walked the rebuilt dam one evening, watching water move exactly as it should. The structure wasn't just stone anymore. It was proof that systems work when people are willing to use them correctly. A new HOA president introduced herself to Mark, thanking him for his patience and honesty. She promised things would be different. Mark nodded, hopeful but realistic. Neighbors gathered more often now. Conversations replaced whispers. Trust rebuilt slowly. Like the dam itself, Mark knew the shocking twist wasn't destruction or revenge. It was restraint. By choosing inspection over anger, he had changed the balance of power without raising his voice. As the sun set, Mark looked across the water, knowing this story would be told for years. Not as a warning, but as a lesson. And that lesson had one final moment to share. The neighborhood officially reopened the area near the dam with a small gathering. No speeches. No banners. Just quiet understanding of what had been learned. Mark stood among neighbors, no longer isolated. The HOA rules still existed, but fear no longer ruled them. Oversight brought balance. Transparency brought trust. Someone asked Mark if it had been worth the stress. He smiled and said some things are worth protecting, especially when they protect everyone else too. The dam held firm. The water flowed safely. And the HOA had changed, not because of force, but because truth had been allowed to stand. The promise made at the beginning was fulfilled. One inspection had changed the entire neighborhood, not by tearing it apart, but by putting it back together correctly, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.